Well, I figured I'd start the story, actually, with one of my earliest memories of what I wanted to do with my life. And I don't actually remember this, but I was told this. I had a female pediatrician. And so as long as I remember, I wanted to be a pediatrician. So I had set up my life. I was going to be a pediatrician. And when I was 16, I volunteered at a little company, Mary, as a hospital volunteer, and I joined a program called the Medical Explorers. It was actually through the Boy Scouts. And we would go once a month and learn about different medical specialties. And we got to see an open heart surgery, learned in depth about what different doctors did. The emergency room doctor brought slides, and I spent the hour with my head between my knees. The open heart surgery, my mother came as the chaperone, and she remembers it differently than I do. I remember sitting there eating potato chips in the observation room. I think she remembers me being very upset. I remember eating chips. And about that same time, I took high school chemistry. And we had a school that was probably the only high school teacher that I had that was not a good teacher. There was a problem with that particular teacher, and I remember the rule was that anyone who showed up for the final would pass the course. It was a really kind of an interesting situation. And I had a therapist at the time, and he made me a bet that if I got an A in chemistry, he would let me drive his Ferrari. I ended up getting a B+ in the class. So he took me for a ride in the Ferrari. Again, the way my mother tells the story, I think it was a very, I want to say, lucky thing that I didn't get the A, because I don't think he could have let me drive his Ferrari for legal reasons. But I got to ride in a Ferrari, and at 16, that was kind of a cool thing. But chemistry shouldn't be that hard for someone who wants to be a doctor. And my therapist and other advisors, we sat down and talked about what I should do with my life. And I'm very good at reading and writing and thinking, and I'm a very good arguer. And it was suggested to me, and I agreed, that maybe I wanted to consider law school. And so as I entered my junior year of high school, I started thinking of law as a potential career. Nothing was set in stone, but that idea had germinated at that time. So I applied to schools that had a more liberal arts foundation. I was a history major. My actual favorite teacher in school was my history teacher. And so I was a history major, and I graduated college in 3 years, took a year off in between because I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer by 25. I had these set goals. I took a year off between college and law school and went to law school, and I was going to make $100,000 by the time I was 30 years old. It was LA law time, and that was my plan for my life. It was all about money. And I had, nannies were going to raise my children, and, lawyers can have it all, and women can do everything, but you can't really have absolutely everything. And then I went to law school. My life went according to what I thought my plan was. And my dad lost his job halfway through my second year of law school. And the gravy train, the financial gravy train, wasn't quite as lucrative as it had been. They were still able to help, but I had to help make my own ends meet. And my grades slipped a little bit because I had to work a little more than I had. also some of my foundations were shaken. So my grades slipped a bit, not a huge amount, and I didn't see myself quite where I was. And one of the jobs that I got was at Hennessy's as a waitress. That's where I met my husband. That was a good thing. And suddenly that idea of making $100,000 by the time I was 30 and having career first took a back seat to relationships. Career was still there. It was all very important, but it wasn't the only thing in my life. So I graduated from law school, and I did fine. But it wasn't the only thing in my life. And I took the bar, passed it on the first try, and went out to get a job. The year I took the bar, there was a very high pass rate. There were a lot of lawyers. The California bar is known for being very difficult. And that year, more than half of the people who took the bar passed the bar. When I say a high pass rate, I mean more than half passed. That's unusual. And so there were a lot of people looking for jobs and not as many jobs available. I found out at Thanksgiving time that I passed the bar, and I had a job. I was working in the back office of a fashion designer, but I didn't have a job as a lawyer. So I continued to work, and a few months before our wedding, I got a job with a law firm that did car accident defense and in litigation. And what I thought I wanted to do was environmental law. It was my favorite subject in law school. But so I got this job doing car accident defense and litigation. And many lawyers who are litigators, they are good at it because that passion, that drive to get in there and fight for a living. And as I said, I'm good at arguing. It gives them passion and it feeds their soul. Not so much for me. And I knew I was not with the right firm for me. The people at that firm, it was not a good fit, and I left shortly after. And after a couple bumps in the road, I ended up doing construction defect litigation. I was hired, I'm trying to explain this. I was paid by insurance companies to represent builders who built homes that had problems. And so they were sued by the homeowner, and there was a leaky roof, or there was this, that, and the other. And quite often I represented a small subcontractor who wasn't the problem. But in a construction defect litigation case, everyone is involved. And I was very much a cog in a wheel. I was just part of this ongoing machinery. The plaintiff, the homeowner, hated me because I represented the defense side. My own client hated me because the insurance company was probably going to pay to defend this case, and chances are they didn't do much of anything wrong, and even if they did, I never had a client who ever did anything wrong. And the insurance company didn't need me. They needed a lawyer filling my role, but they didn't need me. So I didn't find the work I was doing very fulfilling. Battling every day. Everything you do in litigation is about a fight. That's the whole point of litigation. One person says one thing and another person says another, and that's the purpose of litigation. You have a judge or a jury saying who is right, and lawyers pick up the fight on behalf of the other people. So that's how I spent my life and my days. I found it very soul destroying. And for 12 years, 2 doing car accidents and 10 doing construction defect litigation, that's how I made my living. Then in 2009, my dad died. And he and my mother had put together their estate plan. They had everything in place that needed to be in place for their situations. So when Dad died, Mom and I, all we needed to do was grieve. And that's hard enough. And 2009 was a tough year for everyone. 2008, 2009, 2008 was the beginning of the Great Recession. Houses weren't being built, so if people weren't having as many new houses, there weren't as many lawsuits. There were a lot of lawsuits, but there just weren't as many. I got laid off. Best thing that ever happened to me, because I decided that I did not want to do what I had been doing, and I wouldn't have had the courage to leave on my own. How do you give up income? How do you just turn your back on half of the income that your family needs to support it? So the choice was taken from me, and I'm very, very grateful. And luckily, my boss was very kind. I worked for a sole practitioner, and he gave me time to find another job or decide what to do. So that was nice. And in that process, I decided that what I wanted to do was what my parents had. I had on the side been helping clients prepare wills, doing prenuptial agreements, and I thought, if I did this on the side for friends for nothing, I can do this as a living. So I took some what are called continuing education classes to figure out what more do I need to do. It gives me an opportunity to, well, for a couple of reasons. One, as I said, I'm not helping, my work isn't for the people with a ton of money. It's for the people who look like me, the people who really need it. And it satisfies a basic need that everyone has. And it allows me to be who I am much more than what I am. 5 years ago, I think even as recently as 5 years ago, I was concerned with the what. What do you do? I'm a lawyer. And over the last couple of years, I've been really thinking about who I am and coming up with answers to that. We were talking about the headmaster of my school and the founder of my school having this vision of who people should be in the world. And I'm going to mangle the quote. It was something about, her name was Margaret Chadwick. And Margaret Chadwick thought that she had done her job when we say we, and we mean people of every race, color, creed, nationality, not just you and me here in this room. And when he said that, it just really struck me. That's what I'm working for. And that's what I'm working on teaching my kids through my job, their involvement at the church, at Boy Scouts, and in my day-to-day life, modeling. Don't always succeed, but I try. And certainly my job as a litigator didn't do that for me. but this lets me do that.